Hello everyone, this is the demo video for Water Simulator modifier. In this, I will explain the settings of these modifiers and how to use them in your project. So let's get started. When you download this Water Simulator from Blender Market or from a Gumroad page, you will get this zip file, and let's unzip this. And this contains this Water Simulator modifier. So let's open that file, and we have this. This file contains this plane with these three modifiers: water simulator, foam particles and floating particles. First, I will show you how to use these modifiers in a different project file. Then I will explain the settings of these modifiers. There are two ways to use these modifiers in different project file. You can append these modifiers or you can use them as assets. Let's first append these modifiers. We have this new file. Let's first append those modifiers. So we have this new file. Let's delete everything. Then we're going to append those modifiers. Go to the file, then go to this append, and then navigate that water simulator modifier file. Double click on that, then go to this node tree, and you have to append all these node groups. Keep in mind that the node group that has this asterisk prefix are eternal. They are not for the user. Let's append all these group nodes, and they will bring these default collections, leaf collections and object collections. Okay, let's for the moment hide these. Let's add a plane. Then we're going to subdivide this plane. Keep in mind that the resolution of the input mesh will determine the resolution or the details of the water. For higher detailed water, you have to increase the resolution or the polygons of the input mesh. So now we have this plane. To add those modifiers, go to this modifier section, then add the geometry nodes modifier, and from the drop down list select this water simulator. So then go to this material preview. We have this, and let me unhide this object collection. It contains this animated sphere for the interaction. However, you can use any your object for the interaction. Just animate that object and put in a collection and select that collection in this input. I will explain these settings in a depth later in this video. So if we play the animation, we can see that this sphere is interacting with this water. And to add the foam particles, again add this geometry node modifier, then select this foam particles. It's going to add these small particles. Let me increase their size and also lower this threshold. So these are the foam particles. Similarly, you can also add the floating particles. Add another geometry node modifier and then select this floating particles. It's going to scatter these leaves which is inside this leaf collection. Okay. This sphere is interacting with the water. We have these foam particles and also these leaf particles. Now let's use these modifiers as assets. So let me open a new file. We have this new file. To use those modifiers as assets, first you have to copy this blend file into your asset folder. So let's copy this into this folder. This is my asset folder. And after that you have to define the path for that folder. Here in this asset library, I have defined this path. Okay, so let's delete everything. Let's add a plane. Then we need to add the subdivisions to this plane. To use those assets, let's open this asset browser. Go to this asset browser, then go to this unassigned category. You will have these three modifiers. Let's drag this onto this object. It's going to add that water simulator as modifier, and also it will bring this collection. See, we have this interacting sphere. Similarly, you can also add this foam particles. Let me decrease this velocity strength to see those particles. And then you can also add the floating particles. Just drag this onto this object and it will bring this leaf collection. Okay, let me hide that. Now you have these floating particles. Let me hide this. To bake these simulations, just select the object and then go to this physics tab and you will have this simulation node category, and here you can bake this or delete this bake. Okay, keep in mind that if you don't select this object, then this will not appear. Let me show you this. See, it is not there, and this will only appear when you select the object which has simulation nodes. Now I will explain the settings of these modifiers. First, I will explain the settings of water simulator. Let me hide these modifiers. These are the settings of this water simulator. They are divided in different categories. The first is the initial simulation settings. This is very standard for any kind of simulation. You have to define the start frame, end frame for the simulation, and the timestamp. Then you have this restoring force settings. It has force strength and push factor. Higher the strength of this restoring force going to restore this water very quickly, and you will have the faster motion for this water. I will show you this. Okay, this is the motion with this 2 strength. Let me lower this to a 0.75. The water is moving slowly and more distorted because we have lowered the strength of this restoring force. Okay, and then you have this push factor. This factor control how much this object can push this water in the velocity direction. So this is with 0.25. If I increase this to a 1, which is very extreme, and it's going to push this water very strongly in the velocity direction of this sphere. See, a water really distorted by this object. Okay, and after that you have this velocity settings. First you have this overall velocity, then you have velocity from the object or from the object collection, and then you have the velocity from the noise. This overall velocity is the overall velocity scale for this water movement, and here you can smooth this velocity, because when we get the velocity from the object, it can be very turbulent, so that's why this smooth factor will smooth that velocity. Okay, here you can control the velocity from the object, how much velocity you want to impart from this sphere onto this water. Then you can select the collection, which is in this case object. You can define the fall of width, means how far this sphere can affect the velocity of this water. Fill inside option to use the volume of this sphere to affect the water, and this is the timestamp. So let me play this animation with this 0.1 velocity. Now if we increase this to a very high value, let's say 0.75 or let's say 1, see, it is really strongly pushing the water. And here you can define the fall of width from the surface, and this is for the volume. If we increase this to 0.25, it's going to affect a very larger area around this sphere. After that you have this velocity from the noise. Let me first make this 0 and show you the water interaction of this sphere. See, you have very smooth trail. To add the turbulence, you have to add this velocity from the noise. Okay, if you add that, then you're going to have very turbulent water trail based on this object. See, now it is very turbulent as compared to the previous case. And you can change the scale of that noise and also the noise distortion. You have this displace settings. In real life, if we put something in solid in water, it's going to displace that water based on its volume. So for that effect, this is the settings. You can control the displace factor, normal mix factor, and fall of width. Let's first make this 0. See, this sphere is pushing this water, but it is not displacing this. So with this displace factor, you can control how strongly this sphere or this interaction object push this water or displace this water. Mix factor for the normal, it's going to make this water more turbulent. Means if I increase this to a 1, then it's going to make this water very turbulent and chaotic. See, and here you can control the fall of width, which is similar to this fall of width. So this is with 0.02 and if I make this 1.1, see it is displacing very strongly. It also has this fill inside option, means to use the volume of this object to affect the water. If you don't use this fill inside, then it's going to only use the surface of this object for interactions or for the displacement, and in this case for the velocity interaction. And then you have this background wave settings. This is a setting for the rest of the water which is not interacting with this sphere. So this motion is based on the noise. You can control the strength, speed and the noise scale. You have this material settings. You can set the material for this water, and these are the settings for the cavity attribute. For this water, I have also generated this cavity attribute that you can use for the material. Now I will explain the settings of this foam particles. So these particles are the foam particles. You can also use your own collection for these foam particles, otherwise it's going to use this icosphere. So you can control the subdivisions for this icospheres, seed for distribution and the density of this distribution. Higher the density, going to scatter more particles. This is the threshold for the scattering. If I lower this 0.01, you have more particles, and if you increase this to let's say 0.03, then it's going to scatter only particle where the velocity is greater than 0.03. You have this particle settings. You can control the radius, minimum radius and maximum radius for the random radius, and then you can also offset these particles along the normal of this water surface, how far you want to push this. And this is the material settings for this foam particles. Now I will explain the settings for these floating particles. Let's first enable them. So these leaves are the floating particles. So to scatter these floating particles, first you have to define the collection. So in this case, this is the leaf collection. It contains this leaf. However, you can use any collection for the floating particles. Then you can define the separate children, reset children and pick instances. Means if this collection contains more than one object, you can separate them, or you can use them as a join, or you can also reset them if they are not at the world origin. And you can also use this pick instance. If you have more than one object inside this, you can pick them randomly using this setting. And here you can change the seed for the floating particles and the density. Again, it controls the number of particles. Then you have this initial simulation settings, start frame, end frame and the timestamp. This is similar to this water simulator. After that you have this particle settings. First you have time factor and offset along the normal. Then you have this rotation and scale. Floating particles are getting the velocity from the underlying this water surface, and with this factor you can damp that velocity for these floating particles. I'll show you this. So this is the motion of these leaf particles without damp factor. So let me increase this to a 0.5. They are not collected here, and their movement is less with respect to the water. Let's back this to 0. And this is the offset along the normal. In this case, leaf may produce an intersection problem while rendering, so you can push them slightly along the normal of this surface. And this is the rotation. You can change the seed and you can control this align factor. So let me pick this area. See, they are not aligned with this water surface, and with this you can align them with the water surface. This is the angle for the rotation. And after that you have this scale seed, scale minimum and scale maximum. You can also define the minimum scale and maximum scale for these leaves. Then you have this material setting for these floating particles. By default, it's going to use the material which is this object has in this leaf collection. Otherwise, you can also override that material by defining the custom material here. So this is it about the settings of these modifiers and how to use them in your project. If you have any query or confusion, please let me know. So thank you for watching. Until next time, happy noding. Bye.